13 years ago, a young man drove into a neighborhood, parked his car, and vanished.
His family desperately seeking closure more than a decade later. Surveillance video captured what are believed to be Steven Koecher's last moments alive. 8
News Now investigator David Charnes reviewing new clues in the search for Steven. David?
Well, it is truly haunting video. 30-year-old Steven Koecher walking through this Henderson retirement community, never to be seen again. So where was Steven going? Who was he meeting? And why was his phone pinging off a tower miles away days after he disappeared? What did you see in that video?
If that is Steven, that he's going somewhere with a purpose.
You're watching the last time 30-year-old Steven Koecher is seen alive. It's December 13th, 2009. A surveillance camera catches Steven driving into this Henderson retirement community. Minutes later, at the strike of noon, Steven walks in and out of view. Where he is now is a mystery.
He was always just a kind person.
Dallin Koecher has never given up finding his older brother, who was living in St. George, Utah at the time.
And try a new start.
Steven volunteered in church, was learning to play guitar, and was trying to make some money washing windows.
It would have taken a lot, in my personal opinion, for him to have planned all this out to disappear and without a trace.
He was trying to make it on his own. That was the biggest thing.
James Burke, Danny Livingston, and Kevin Wyatt are private investigators working to find Steven.
There's not one shred of evidence that suggests that Steven did this to himself or that Steven walked away.
Their case starts before that video, before Steven disappeared. Records the 8 News Now investigators obtained reveal Steven was 3 months behind in rent.
And I think Steven had some debt that he needed to clear up, and someone made him an offer, and he took it, probably not knowing what that was, and it resulted in his disappearance and what we believe is his death.
In the days before his disappearance, financial statements put Steven in St. George, then Washington, Utah, then near Overton, Mesquite, and finally in the Las Vegas Valley on the day he disappeared.
He didn't have any money, so he couldn't afford to drive back and forth, so he's doing something for someone.
But there's no record of why he ended up here.
What's he doing in an upscale over 55 neighborhood?
That home surveillance camera catches Steven's car driving down Savannah Springs Avenue at 11:54. He parks his car at the end of the cul-de-sac. This photo showing how police found it abandoned days later. Inside, gifts for his family, frozen food, a pillow, and a blanket.
Steven was coming back to that car.
Steven then walks up to a house on the street where a witness claims he said this.
He says, "Hey, do you want some cash?"
Something along those lines.
The private investigators suspect what happened next led to Steven's fate. Steven leaves the neighbor's house, rounding the corner at Evening Light Street toward the house where they believe Steven was making a delivery. The private investigators have this theory.
I think he went to the home that he was supposed to go to and actually says, "Oh, kind of funny. I told the guy to ask him if he wanted some money." I think that's what resulted in Steven's disappearance, was that error.
And then there's this clue. The investigators obtaining these photos from inside a home in the neighborhood taken shortly after Steven's disappearance. It's the same property where they believe Steven was heading in those final frames on video.
We have photos of a room that was destroyed at about the same time. So is that based on a struggle, a fight, and a death? Is it based on a struggle, a fight, and a kidnapping? Is it based on somebody who's just mad? I don't know.
While Steven vanished on December 13th, his digital footprint lived on.
He and/or his cell phone was moving around, whether he was alive or not.
The next day, someone called Steven's voice mailbox. The phone's signal continuing to ping off a cell phone tower near the 95 in Russell for several days until the device died. 13 years later, Steven, too, is silent.
For me, this is what's called a missing body homicide, and law enforcement needs to start over.
Do you think your brother's alive?
So if he's alive and he knows who he is, I have a hard time imagining he would just be gone and stay away from our family.
Dallin Koecher says he's accepted the fact his brother may not be coming home.
I honestly don't think he's alive anymore.
He has this message if Steven is out there.
If you're watching, there's always a spot here in this family for you, and it has never closed and it never will close.
Neither St. George Police nor Henderson Police have arrested anybody, nor have they filed any charges in connection with Steven's disappearance. Henderson Police declined to talk to us for this story, saying there were no updates for them to provide. If you have any updates for them, you can do so anonymously by calling Crime Stoppers. I'm David Charnes, 8 News Now. Brian.